Sweet, everyone ready to go? Okay, then let's do it. 3, 2, 1. Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Wano Report, episode 10. It's like 10 done, right?
I thought that we were further than that, but
yeah, but
no,
better than nothing. Slow start.
Yeah.
So with me today, I have, as always, the good Mr. Morj, and today again we have a great guest that we can announce, and we have the great Drizzt here to talk about the second act of Wano. How are you doing, Drizzt?
Yo, what's going on? I'm sure this is the perfect audience for people that know me. Yeah.
Dude, we were saying like we were talking about when we're gonna get you on the podcast, and I was like, let's just do it next week. And like Morj was always like, no, we have to wait till we have Act 2 because I want to talk to Drizzt about Act 2. Like we want to have the whole package.
Yeah, Drizzt, you don't know, you were dressed up. You were a guest that was being put off till Wano Act 2 ended because I feel like you will drum up some good discussion for the end of this, basically.
We thought 2-on-1 is fair, so.
Also, guys, if you don't know Drizzt, then definitely check out his channel for some alternative views of One Piece.
I did just put out a 42-minute long video winking Mihawk, so if you like Mihawk, go check that out.
His channel is pretty much exclusively a Mihawk fan club channel.
I don't know. Mihawk's not that cool, is he? There's it's whack characters like Mihawk, Shanks. I don't like that.
All right, thanks for having me on, guys. I'll talk to you next week.
Get the Red Force on here too.
Yeah. So guys, definitely make sure to check out Drizzt on his channel. I'm going to put that in the description down below. Also, if you're wondering today, this episode's going to be on, or it is, as you know, on my channel, because the good Mr. Morj wants to trigger the algorithm a little bit with his new great content wave. So let's hope that works, and definitely make sure to give him those watch time.
If you're watching if you're watching this video right now and haven't seen my Wano analysis, please watch that after this video, or leave this video, go watch that,
and watch it.
Maybe come back. I don't know.
Yeah. Right. So I have the pleasure of hosting this 2 times in a row. I'm thrilled. Thanks at this point. Quick shout out to all of you. Thanks for 20,000 subscribers. I cracked that.
Ohara, you're at 20,000.
Yeah, I cracked that during the last review. So thanks for that.
Boom, baby.
Also, make sure, as always, we're going to do that at the beginning of the podcast. Follow all of us on Twitter.
Oh yeah, we have no Twitter subscribers.
We have no Twitter subscribers, so definitely follow us there. We'll all
also just call it Twitter subscribers.
You need to put out more memes.
Exactly. Apart from Drizzt, we're both not very funny, but still follow us. So.
Yeah.
Also, that is in the description below. But now let's get into the juicy stuff. Enough introduction. So, I think we're gonna pop it off with some questions or general discussion first. What do you guys think?
Yeah, we can do questions.
Right.
Yeah, Morj is question master today.
Yeah, I got questions up. So first question was, can I get on the podcast? I don't think we're gonna be doing that one.
$100 donation, he gets on.
This guy was pretty persistent, so 3 questions are on that.
Fact.
Next, first real question. Okay, so the thing is, a lot of the questions were generally about Sword, so I think we can just talk about that in general. So the first one was basically, do you think Drake answers to Akainu, or does he work for a moderate faction of the Marines? Did you guys see that, I think that image running around on Twitter of Akainu with the sword tattoo from that one cover story? Or not cover story, cover image?
Oh, actually, no. What was there? I didn't see that.
Basically, it's like Akainu, he's trimming a tree, which is like one of his hobbies. And on his right shoulder, he has a sword tattoo.
Oh, right.
And this wasn't a cover story, but it was just, one of the standard color, cover and illustrations or whatever. But still, we would assume that the sword is actually one of his standard tattoos.
Oh, that's interesting, because what I was thinking was more in the direction, or what I think has been going around as well, is that it's actually Aokiji, who's not left the Marines in the end, but is the leader of that faction. But both.
Well, an interesting line to draw is that whenever we were in Dressrosa and we got Rosinante's backstory, Sengoku was in Sword as well, because whenever they were talking to each other, they referred to each other as similar aliases as to what Drake and Kobe were in the recent chapters. So it seems like the Fleet Admiral knows about this organization, and if Akainu's there, he probably knows about it as well.
Right. Do you think it's something that is like that people generally also in the Marines don't know about if they're not above a certain rank, or is it something like the CP where it's okay, we know it exists, but we don't really know who's in it?
So what was...
it might be a secret or faction.
Right. Yeah, what was interesting to me is that, so we can assume X-Drake was a sword member all the way back at Sabaody, right? But Kizaru didn't seem to be fully aware of that, or he was playing dumb, but it just didn't make as much sense to me why he would play dumb in that situation.
Or he's just a really good method actor.
Oh, it's actually interesting if you look back at Morj, because the dialogue for Kizaru actually hints that he was like joking the entire time.
And then he kicks
he
Drake
refers to Drake as
a joke.
Rear Admiral, and then he says, "Oh, that's former Rear Admiral."
Oh, interesting.
Oh, right.
So I didn't actually go back and read that, but he still kicked him. I guess for show.
Well, I think he had to kick him just to
make
I'm
sure.
sorry, I gotta do this to you, bro.
Yeah, make sure. Yeah, if he's gonna beat up all the rest of the supernova, he's gotta beat up Drake.
Take the speed of light kick.
Also, Laws seems to be someone who is questioning Drake during that point in time too, because the first thing Laws says to Drake is, "How many people have you killed, Drake?"
Yeah, I saw something interesting. This was running around on Reddit this morning, which was basically, some people seem to think that Law is actually a member of SWORD as well, and then that Law and Drake have had a bit of a connection ever since the Sparrow Island incident. They possibly got off on the same ship.
Right,
Shouts to whoever put this theory up. I forget who it was on Reddit.
Like, the only thing I don't see this working out with is, like I think then the interaction between Law and Drake didn't really make too much sense afterwards, right? Like, because he was like, I don't know what you're playing at, but, like, I'm just gonna go along with it. Like,
yeah. Assuming that was Drake, which I think most of us can assume was the case when he was exiting.
Yeah, I think that's pretty certain.
Okay,
I think it's also, like, what is also interesting in that regard maybe is, because I saw a lot of people, like, throwing around, okay, there's a shield, like ZP0, and then, like, there's sword. Like, do you guys feel like that's... Because, like, I didn't really get the impression that those are two factions that are connected. I mean, the name makes sense, but then again, like, in the chapter, it was basically stated that the Marines aren't really aware of everything that the CP does and the world government's up to. What's your take on that?
So, for me, what I think is interesting is basically, we can assume that SHIELD or Aegis or whatever it's called at the CP, they've been around forever, right? To me, the impression I got was that SWORD seems to be, there's some sort of, a bit of a rogue organization. Not rogue necessarily, but they're a bit more secretive. And they don't seem to be happy with everything that the world government is doing, at least from, Kobe and Drake's brief conversation. And that's a bit speculative, obviously, but that is a bit of the sense I got. So it's possible that SWORD is especially if we're going along with the theory that, maybe Aokiji is the leader of SWORD and, like, stuff like that. And just the characters who we've seen in SWORD so far do seem to be some of the more positive characters. Like, it's possible that SWORD was created just as the Marines' internal, counter check on SHIELD to basically be doing certain activities to kind of monitor what the world government is up to and everything like that. So, I don't know, like, maybe it was formed as a bit of, like, an internal rebellion organization against SHIELD, which might come into play down the line in the future. Because otherwise I don't really know why... Like, the two names are very similar, obviously. What are you guys' thoughts?
That's what I would lean towards as well, because whenever we see Akainu talking to the Gorosei, after Dressrosa, he's
not happy.
Irritated that they're just things are going behind their back and it's not going directly to the Navy and the Marines. So even Akainu doesn't really like what's going on. So you can even justify him being in SWORD as well, because he wants to get rid of that part.
You're a big Akainu fan, right?
That would be a pretty dope...
Oh yeah, I love Akainu.
Yeah, that would be a pretty dope twist, like, if Akainu ends up not being the bad guy, like, of the Marines. I like that, I think.
I think Akainu, personally, I think Akainu, no matter what, is, like, that's what he's been built up to be. I think he's, like... I think, in my opinion, he's as much of, like, a must-fight for Luffy as Blackbeard. Like, I legitimately view him in the same light as Blackbeard in terms of how much Luffy definitely has to fight him. I mean, Luffy's scar is literally from Akainu, and I think in the series there's a bit of a trend where, like, Zoro's scar is from Mihawk, those sort of things.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, like, clash-wise, that's definitely something that'll happen. The thing is, like, I feel like I mean, Blackbeard might definitely be a lot more debatable, but I think, like, both characters definitely have, like, depending on, like, where Oda takes the end game, basically, I feel like both Blackbeard or Akainu could have the potential after they clash with Luffy to, like, become an ally in the end, like, going against the top. I mean... It
depends. Yeah, I mean, it's so hard. Ever since Im was introduced, it, like, threw everything I thought into whack. I thought Akainu was, like, the big bad from the government side, and then Blackbeard was obviously the final villain.
Well, the interesting thing about Akainu is that he's not necessarily, like, an evil guy. I mean, his motto is absolute justice. Right. And the way he goes about things, obviously there's a moral dilemma that's involved into it, but he's not necessarily a bad person, I don't think. He did spare Aokiji's life.
I think in general, Oda...
He didn't have to do that. I think in general,
Oda tries to, like, not establish... Like, even, like, characters like Doflamingo or Blackbeard, like, all of these characters, I don't think Oda really has introduced too many characters that are truly good or truly bad, you know? Like, I feel like he always takes ideals and then like lets characters interpret them in different ways. Like the thing with
Yeah, I think this iconist takes everything to the extreme. Like whenever he made sure that there was no runaways from Ohara, even if it meant killing innocent people. And even at Marineford, and people say Akainu was like a scumbag at Marineford, he was just doing his job.
I mean,
the thing is,
honestly,
you guys said.
I think I'm sure. Like, I think there's no doubt that Oda definitely like tries to portray or sees Akainu's actions in a critical way. Like, I think there's no doubt about that.
Right.
But at the same time, like you say, like from Akainu's perspective, like he's still like, even though it's maybe from the outside perspective a twisted way of justice, like he still thinks it's justice. And I'm sure that we're gonna get like some sort of form of backstory if he gets more important again, that will justify why he has like this hardline direction towards how he enacts that.
Well, him and Kizaru both came from North Blue, and in the Oda drew them as all as kids before. And Akainu, it looks roughed up as he comes from like, a rough place, so that might explain why.
To me, it depends, because there's like, you can say that Akainu's not evil because he's just doing his job, and like it's kind of like this just goes back to the main question of like, like if you're doing things that you consider objectively terrible, but with good intentions, then does that make you evil or whatever, right? And like in real life, there's nobody who's going around who's thinking like, hey, I'm evil. Like, I'm just a legitimately... Like, everybody has their own justification for why they do certain things. And I think so that applies to most of the villains in One Piece as well, obviously. So, I think, Oda doesn't usually say that this character is, like, downright evil or that character is downright evil. But I do think that, like, extremism is something that... Extremism on either end of the spectrum. So, like, I did a video on this, like, a little while back called, like, the philosophy of One Piece or whatever. And I definitely think that Akainu and Blackbeard are both supposed to be that other end of the spectrum that Oda is definitely not portraying in a positive light. So, like, Blackbeard's the far end of lawlessness and, like, absolute freedom. Like, pure anarchy, no rules, just let the whole world, like, do, chaos all around, everything burn. Like that. Like, let the whole world burn. Basically that. And then Akainu's the far, far other side of it, which is obviously, you have to live by the law. The law is everything. Anybody who even threatens to possibly break the law in any possible foreseeable future, that guy's got to be killed. It's better to, like, destroy a ship full of, like, innocent people if there's even, like, a 1% chance that someone could affect the law later on. So, like, I just don't think that... I still think that those are the two standards of those two extremes that Oda has portrayed in the story so far. I think it was really important that they were both the two kind of key figures of the Marineford War. So I just feel like... And they were the two figures who were responsible for Ace and Whitebeard's death. So, like, Akainu fought Whitebeard and then killed Ace, and then Blackbeard fought Ace and then killed Whitebeard. I just think that those two are, like, they're set up to be taken down by the end of the story.
I definitely agree with that. I think Akainu will be defeated at some point.
By Luffy, I think, specifically.
When we get to the final war.
I just don't know where Im comes into it. That's the thing. I think Im's thrown off now.
Well, for me, I think it's like this. Before Imu was even revealed, I kind of assumed that he existed in some way, shape, or form.
I didn't.
Because for me, for Luffy to complete, like, his manifest destiny... He has to defeat someone in Celestial Dragons that actually has all of the bad ideology that encompasses why they're evil to begin with. And Akainu isn't that person. So there had to be someone else.
I think, like, I mean, Im can be, like, pretty dope. The thing is that we had, like, we're pretty far into the story and have zero... we have zero... We have... Literally his shadow. Like, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a thing where it's like, I hope Oda doesn't go like the Naruto Kaguya route, where it's just like a big baddie at the end because big baddie. If I were a betting man, I would try to give as much characterization to Imu as humanly possible so that he kind of feels like a human being by the time that he gets defeated.
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe... Naruto, I felt... Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, thanks. Like, maybe there's just gonna be a twist and, like, he's not gonna be that significant of a baddie in the end anyway.
He
might be Dragon's villain for throwing that out there. Maybe. But I don't know.
If Dragon lives, yeah.
Because Dragon's got way more... I mean, no, that's not fair. Because, like, generally there's always, like, a long list of characters who hate the villain of the story, like, way more than Luffy. But Luffy gets it anyway, because that's just the way the story goes. But, yeah, like, I don't know. Like, with Madara... with the whole Naruto situation, I felt like it made sense with the way he was writing the story at the time, which was, like, he was really pushing, like, look, nobody's really evil in the end because everybody has their own, like, vision for, like, the ideal world. So, like, you had to keep backtracking in terms of, like, alright, this guy's the final villain.
Oh, yeah.
No, Madara's the final villain. No, Madara's somewhat good too. Okay, we just need to have, like, a blank like, mindless monster type villain like Kaguya, who's clearly just bad that they can beat up, and she can be the final villain.
But in the end, like, he also tried to, like, he also got her backstory, right? So
yeah, like a little bit or whatever. I forget what she wanted. She wanted to, like, turn everybody into babies or something like that. It was some weird shit. Alright. Wait, next question?
Let's keep moving.
Unless you guys want to, yeah. I forgot we have questions. I forgot how we got to this point.
Do your job,
yeah.
Morj.
How do you guys feel about the referee being off screen while I'm scrolling? Because that's my question. I didn't like that. I thought that we would get more of him.
I mean, we don't know. Maybe
I'm not a fan.
We're still going back next chapter. I'm not sure, but I don't
true.
think so.
We might be filling in gaps as we go along.
I feel like it would be typical Oda to just like drop a chapter like that with like a lot of uncertain shit and then move back to the main story.
That chapter, I couldn't even count how many questions there were because the translations were so bad. So I was really sure how. Sorry, I'm reading
it's like it's the Sabo thing, it's the Alabasta thing for sure. Blackbeard. Like there was a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah, but I couldn't tell. Like, okay, what are your guys' thoughts about the last chapter in general? Because most of these questions are basically stuff like what happened to Sabo, what did Wapol say to Morgans,
okay,
what's next for Kobe, shit like that.
So, are you asking what do I think in terms of how good I think the chapter was, or where I think the plot lines are going from
let's
that chapter?
start with the plot lines, and then like I think like we can definitely have like a general discussion about Act 2 and then the latest chapter in general later on. You go, Drizzt. It's your call.
Okay, I saw Morj chewing there. I don't know.
Oh, what do you guys be chewing?
So, like for those of you, like since you can't see it, like Mr. Morj is really enjoying his peanut butter and jelly sandwich right now. So
I thought it would be quiet because
it's pure pleasure.
He's eating my kryptonite. I'm allergic to peanuts. Get that away
from me. Just mesmerized by that.
I'm sorry, I just had the last bite. It'll be done in.
No, you enjoy it, man.
Now I'm self-conscious about.
You look pretty happy chewing that, so.
Yes, satisfied man.
That's important.
I guess if I'm gonna talk about plotline, I'll talk about the Boa plotline because that's a lot of people have been talking about that, and I don't know if a lot of people really are thinking about it in terms of what else could happen. Because for me, I think Boa eventually, due to her situation, has to lose at some point in time because unlike every other warlord, she actually has an entire country of people that she needs to protect, and it should be impossible for her to move them all at sea successfully. So I think it's only a matter of time and just attrition for Boa to lose. But at the same point in time, I have a hard time seeing two Luffy fanboys having a definitive fight where one wins and one loses without Luffy coming up. So we'll see what happens. I do think with Boa's character, though, there's only really two routes you can go with it in the series, and one of them is to have her, or have the past of either her or her sisters revealed to the entire world and have, them face the consequences, or maybe one of them get captured by celestial dragons as a slave. So
again,
if there was ever a time that Oda was going to introduce Boa to the crew, which a lot of people have been waiting for, I think that he would maybe have Boa's sisters captured again by the world government and then have Boa basically need help from Luffy whenever that would be. And I do think, like, the thing was with Kobe, like, people don't think like Kobe's strong enough to beat Boa. But Kobe's supposed to be Admiral level by the end of the series.
Exactly.
So.
Well, okay, I always took that as basically like epilogue time Kobe because like it would just be nuts in my because right now he just made Rear Admiral, right? He was a captain. Like,
but then
he went up 2 ranks in the course of the last time we saw him.
Yeah, he was like captain a week ago in the story or something. So
yeah, and he went up 2 ranks. I don't know how that happened. I guess maybe he did something that we just don't know.
Like, good job stopping that torpedo, Rear Admiral.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like, even if Kobe beats Koa and capture, I don't really know, outside of Boa just being a warlord, if it's necessarily that impressive, because Boa hasn't done anything.
Right.
Well, Boa, so the thing is, Boa kind of, like, made Momonga, who was a vice admiral, like, look like shit. So, like, in my mind, even if Kobe is hitting vice admiral level, like, Boa should still be a formidable force for vice admirals, right? Like, it should be... I don't really know which vice admirals I'd be like, because we don't have a really good insight on all of them just yet. I don't know which ones I'd be like...
Vice admirals are either fodder or they're, like, admiral candidates, apparently. So there's, like, a huge gap.
I think it says something that none of them got promoted to admiral. I think there's, like, a heavy gap there, basically. Like, they looked around at all the vice admirals they had and were like, fuck it, we're gonna go to fucking we're gonna look in like Wano or somewhere like that to pick up some admirals for this.
I mean, like, do you guys feel like with Boa it's a possibility, but also like with Mihawk, for example, do you feel like that, like now that they're basically on the run or on the move at least, do you feel like they're gonna, or one or two of them is gonna pop up in Wano, like Mihawk, for example? Instead of
Mihawk and Wano would be wild because everyone would be looking at themselves like, what have I been doing as a swordsman all this time? Like,
that would be pretty dope.
It just sets like a totally different standard or whatever.
If Mihawk was in Wano, it would have to be for a different reason. And the only thing I could possibly think of for me in relation to Mihawk is that he would have to go after Perona.
Right.
If
you mentioned this before,
Perona's after Blackbeard right now.
Oh yeah.
And she's gonna find him eventually. And it's not going to be a good thing. And Mihawk does seem to care about Perona, so maybe he would go out of his way just to see her. Right. I don't know. It depends. But everyone, I think almost like all of the good people are going to end up like involved in the Wano vortex at some point in time by the end of the arc. So it's a possibility.
Do you in generally feel like the big war that Oda's talking, like, do you feel there's gonna be multiple big battles like over the course of the story, or do you feel like, okay, Wano is like now is the Fire Festival, and then like the Wano arc like is gonna conclude with the really big war with the Marines and more Yonko and shit, or do you think it's more like there's gonna be a big battle in Wano, but then like the whole war thing will move outside, maybe back to?
I think there probably will be a big war. I know that we haven't really talked about this. I don't really know what Morj's feelings are since the last time me and him talked about this last year about, you know, Big Mom going down in Wano.
Oh, yeah.
But
I'm more
now
more
that they've allied, I think that it's, unless you have someone else come in and defeat them for the Straw Hats or the Alliance, you basically kind of have to separate Big Mom and Kaido.
Yeah.
So I have the headcanon that maybe Big Mom will be used to distract the Marines while Kaido gets defeated. And whatever happens from there, happens from there. But something along those lines, I think, kind of has to happen. But I don't think it's going to be like the final war. I think this is going to be a precursor to what the final war looks like. Because if it's not, then Whitebeard's words are a lie at his death. And I
think Raftel, like, all the, like, I don't know about you guys, but I think it's pretty certain that, like, Luffy's going to find Raftel. And then, like, something from there is going to happen. Like, either there's going to be a war at Raftel or somewhere else after Raftel. But, like, something has to happen, right? Like, he's not going to be at Raftel, become the Pirate King, and that's it. Like, there's going to be other people there. Maybe only Blackbeard, maybe 20 people, maybe, like, the Marines as well. So I think something has to happen then, for sure, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then, another really interesting plot point, like, is the thing with Sabo, which I'm not too happy with at the moment, because, like, it kind of, what Oda is kind of suggesting is that there will be, like, a second Marine fort.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Like, if they gotta go save Sabo.
Oh, yeah. I don't think that's going to be the case. I hope not. I mean, there's a possibility for that to happen, but if Sabo Sabo's already like a poor man's ace, in my opinion. And if this plotline happened again with Sabo, he hasn't really done anything.
That's the thing, yeah.
If it happened again, I don't think Oda would go that low just to recopy that plotline. So I think there has to be some more complexity to it. I've seen people suggest that, you know, since he was trying to save Kuma, maybe Kuma regained his humanity and like sent Sabo flying for 3 days, along with the rest of the commanders, and they're presumed dead or something. But I just cannot see him being captured again and just like executed.
I would assume, good.
Oh, sorry, you can. I mean,
no, I'm saying like I would assume that like that.
I was talking to Brago. Like, I was on Brago's channel the other day, so shout out to Brago, because I know he's listening sometimes, at least, to this podcast. And we were talking about like what Oda could do, especially in Wano, but also like towards the end of the story that could like really rise the stakes, basically. And what we said was, in the end, like, killing an important character is always like your biggest option to really create impact. So we were like, okay, there's like a couple of characters that are like close to Straw Hat level that you could kill off, like maybe Sabo, like maybe, I don't know who else is, like, there's a few characters that are still like important in a way and also like emotionally connected to the Straw Hats, but like the real impact would be to kill off a Straw Hat, right? Like, I don't think Oda would refrain from that. I'm not sure if his editors would be happy with it, but like, I'm sure, like, even though every one of us would hate it, that would be something that would really raise the stakes, right? Like, if you kill off an Usopp, or I don't know.
To me it is an Usopp if that's the situation.
Yeah, I think the only option outside of like Luffy dying at the end of the series, if that's going to happen, I think the only one that really makes that big of an emotional impact would have to be Usopp.
And,
like
Usopp,
even killing off like someone like Zoro. Like Zoro has his character built around this idea of fighting and like dying an honorable death. Like him dying in a sword fight or something would be tragic, but like not as impactful as someone who's strived his whole life, like being afraid of basically danger and then being killed off.
Yeah, to be honest, like I've actually viewed ever since Usopp said it in Elbaf. Sorry, not in Elbaf. They haven't been there yet. Ever since Usopp said that in Little Garden, like to me, it's just made sense that like his storyline, it can almost only like most satisfyingly end with death, because Usopp is a brave warrior of the seas as is. But, like, for him to actually leave something to go out in a way that's special or, like, truly fulfill that dream in a way that, like, we could never have possibly imagined for him from the start of the story, that would be for him to sacrifice himself for the Straw Hats. Like, Zoro, ever since Zoro did that thing with Kuma back in Thriller Bark, him sacrificing himself for the Straw Hats, like, that, it's been done at this point. Like, sure, he didn't die there, but we learned nothing new about his character. It means nothing for his character for him to do that again. Usopp's the one who would, like, mean by far the most, and it would fulfill that sort of arc. Like, if he goes out doing that, then by the end, then we could be saying that, you know what, maybe he was the bravest Straw Hat, in a way. So, I think death makes the most sense for Usopp. I think it's just whether or not Oda's willing to pull the trigger on that. I'm sure he had that plan, possibly. But whether or not he's, like, willing to go through with it all the way at the end of the story or not, I don't know. We'll see.
Will be interesting.
Shanks will probably... You know what's funny? So, like, let's assume that Shanks dies too, which I think is very possible. Mm-hmm. So if Shanks dies, and Usopp dies, and Ace dies, then, like, One Piece has this stereotype of, like, you know, characters don't die a lot, but if we get to the end of the story and it's like, okay, so the main character lost his brother, his best friend, and his father figure.
Yep.
I think One Piece does have, like, some of the most significant character deaths you can have for, like, a story.
I think Shanks has been running around with a death mark across his front head, like,
yeah, his little
pretty
scar.
Yeah,
pretty much. He got that little scar.
I think like he's a dead man walking pretty much at this point.
It's only a matter of time as far as I can see.
That's just
like I think the plot line that Blackbeard's gonna kill off Shanks is almost as set in stone as.
Yeah, I mean, I some people think that Shanks won't die, and it's just like I don't know, man. It seems like it's gonna be lined up. Was Blackbeard just gonna beat him, and just like walk away? Like,
I'm going to let you live
this time.
Yeah. So should we dive a little bit into the second act since it's not that short?
Yeah, and you gotta pick somebody else at one or whatever.
Yep. So yeah, I guess Drizzt, if you're up for it, we would like to start with your general take, because we know that we all have a little different.
You're starting with the thunder.
Yeah, we start with the thunder, and then we'll be like the soft clouds, the pushy clouds coming in.
All right, so I see. This is the part in the video where people were like digging my commentary, like, "Oh, Drizzt is not so bad," and like when I give my opinions on Act 2, they're like, "You know what? I'm just gonna go dislike every single one of Drizzt's videos."
Do you wanna start with that? We can all talk about like what we've liked about Wano so far. I'm sure you've got some stuff you liked about Wano. Oh shit! Oh shit! You haven't liked anything in Wano so far?
What about the art style?
There are a few things that I've liked, but my overall opinion so far, especially within Act 2, is I think Act 2 has been awful.
Oh man!
Right.
All right.
And I think Wano in general has been bad.
Oh man! All right, commenters are typing away furiously right now. So
yeah, it's bound to happen. I've been like commenting on what I think to be the quality of Wano for months at this point.
Yeah, I only know your thoughts from Twitter, so like it's just like vague stuff basically.
Right. Yeah. So I've gone into like the detail. Like half of my reviews are like 30 plus minutes long, where it's like 17 minutes of it is explaining the writing choices and how there are certain plot holes.
Oh, I saw one that was like
writing instances that don't make sense.
The defecation of One Piece, and I was like, oh man, I watched like a little bit of that one, but I think it took like a little bit to get into it, so then I didn't. But like,
right, yeah, I mean, it was
I saved that for like I'll watch later, but then I didn't.
Yeah, I mean that was a really long video. Frankly, so far, I'm not invested in Wano. I do not like most of what's happening in Wano so far, and I don't know. Let me get your guys' opinions, and then I'll go into, if you want to have details, I'll go into details, but I'd rather have your guys' opinions so we can kind of bounce them back off and forth off each other.
I can go first.
Yes, please.
So, Wano Act 2, I think, okay, so recently from the video, hopefully the video is out today, so I'll be referencing this video a couple times, but like, it's my Wano arc analysis, it's basically everything that I see thematically, it's mostly actually it's purely themes and then a bit of the character stuff, but it's everything that I see going on in Wano right now. And Wano to me so far, so for the longest time I felt like it was the arc that Oda was building up towards the most from like the New World, right? And I think that was very clear, honestly, and I think looking at it now, especially on reread, it does seem like every single arc in the New World so far was built up to Wano. So everything that Oda has wanted to say or do since the time skip, basically. And like that's reflected in some of his comments as well about like, Marineford and shit, like this is the arc I've wanted to draw. Like everything that he's wanted to do has been in Wano. So with that perspective, like while reading Wano on week-to-week basis, I felt like it was a little hard to like manage everything. Like it felt like Oda was like pacing wise, maybe a little more rushed than he usually is. Maybe a lot more things happening in a chapter, whereas before we could expect like maybe 2 scenes in a chapter that really focused on Oda's trying to fit in like 3, 4 scenes that he's trying to jump around throughout the chapter. But then when I reread it from start to finish, so, I mean, in my initial weekly reading experience, the chapters that I really liked were chapters that were one scene. So, like, Luffy in the Udon prison mine, or like Yasue's death, or like Yukimaru and stuff like that. Those were the chapters that I loved, that I thought were really great. But then on reread, everything just flows so much better. I also read the official translation, so like, commenter, or like viewers and stuff like that, if you're not reading the official translation, like, obviously do Jimini's box or whatever weekly, but like, if you're rereading, I super duper recommend like just paying $2 and like reading the official. It makes everything like, because the language is more consistent and the ideas flow so much better. But anyway, main point being like on reread, all the ideas flowed really, really well. It felt like I could understand what's happening like at all parts of the plot and everything like that. And you get more so what Oda's trying to do on reread, like idea wise, because the flow of ideas just becomes a lot more clear. So by the end of it, like, I am very excited now. Like, I was excited for the Fire Festival as soon as we hit end of Act 2, but now I see, like, he's going for something really interesting, really ambitious, and I think Wano's, like, maybe the most thematically dense arc that Oda's done so far, and I think we're, like, not even halfway, or close to halfway. So what about you, Ohara?
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with you on many points. For me, like, one big thing that, like, makes the arc really special for me, and that I think I say in pretty much every review of mine, is I love the art style.
Dude, the art style's good.
Like it might sound trivial, but like to me, since it's a manga, like I feel it lives with the design also, the story. So I really enjoy the whole concept art behind Wano. And I feel like you can tell that Oda loves drawing this arc, especially compared to others before. In regard to the flow itself, like, I kind of like from Twitter, Drizzt, I kind of have an idea of what your issues with the arc are. For me, I think like I wouldn't even say like I'm not the type of guy who says that you're wrong, because I think some of that stuff is objective and some is subjective. Like for me, I'm just a person I think who probably or follows story a little differently. Like I'm the kind of person, as long as I don't get smacked in the head with some really illogical thing or some real big issue that I say like what the fuck, I'm pretty forgiving when it comes to smaller inconsistencies. So I personally have been really enjoying this arc. It has me a lot more on my tiptoes, like, or I'm a lot more excited for the weekly chapters than, for example, Dressrosa.
Dressrosa was rough towards the latter.
Yeah, and latter half. I feel like, I think people tend to forget that even though it's been already over 50 chapters, far over 50 chapters, like, we're still in the setup phase, pretty much. Like, now is really, like, the Act 2 and Act 1 was, Act 1 was getting introduced to the country. Act 2 was getting introduced to all the people there. How is the country actually structured? What's going on? And now we're getting back to, like, I see people complaining a lot about that the Straw Hats don't get so much time to shine now. Like, now, from now on, like, we're gonna get a lot of Straw Hat fights and whatever. So for me, it was a really enjoyable ride so far. I really loved it. I understand, for example, like, some things for me could have been fleshed out better. For example, while this chapter where the Kaido Big Mom alliance was pretty hype, at the same time, I feel I personally would have liked it better almost if that would have been, like, timing wise, it's a little bit difficult sometimes. I would love if that would have been spread out a little bit more. At the same time, I know, like, while I personally also would love to see some things more and some things less, basically some events, I also know that Oda is trying to focus especially on the building of the characters and less on the fights at the moment, because we're gonna have a lot of fighting like starting now, I think. So things like with the Big Mom thing, some things I feel could have been handled better for sure, but like I'm really curious what your take is on the big inconsistencies, because for me, like just from recapping it right now in my mind, I know that there were some things that I wasn't super happy with, but all in all, like I didn't feel like there were any big inconsistencies in the story. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I really, like so far I'm really into this arc. But now I'm like,
and it's great that you guys are invested into it. And I'm not gonna like hate anyone that's actually enjoying. They're like, oh, you like it?
Fuck you.
It's over. You know, I think a lot of the things are kind of different between myself and a lot of the other community, and this is actually exemplified by how me and Morj see things the same but completely different at the same time. Is Morj? I think you would admit this. You love themes.
Yes.
Themes are basically that's what gets you going. That is your bread and butter.
It depends. Like, themes are the most, what do you call? Okay. Bit of a separate tangent right here. I think there's like 3 big things that kind of tell me how good a story is, kind of. And like, good is obviously subjective, but this is like the 3 things, right? So like, 1 is plot, 2 is themes, 3 is characters. And I think those 3 things are big, and then everything else comes behind that. So like, you know, action is cool, comedy is cool, how good is the setting, like the world building and stuff, that's great. One other, I guess you can add this, but this is slightly different. I would refer to it as like artistry, and like artistry depends on the medium. So for example, like in a book, that's like how good is the prose, like how well is it actually like written, like the descriptions, the dialogue and stuff. Movies, that would be like cinematography, music, composition of shots and stuff like that. So, and manga, it's obviously how well is it drawn, how well is the framing, stuff like that. So, but artistry separate. But like the main 3 things like in the story are probably for me like the plot, the themes, and the characters. And I talk about themes the most because I feel like that's what people ignore the most with One Piece, because I think One Piece is like the most like underrated in terms of themes, because I think people talk about characters a lot. Like everybody understands that Oda is really great at like crafting a moving story around a character and creating a lovable cast of characters. And I think everybody understands that Oda's like plotting is like, at least on the long form, his long form plotting is like amazing. Like we're still seeing shit like just looking at last chapter, how many new avenues opened up just from that chapter. Like we have so many questions and so many different plot threads that's split from there that are all going to connect. So most people see that stuff. So I've started shifting more so to talking about themes, because that's like, I think the thing that needs to be talked about the most with One Piece. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, so in my experience, and you guys know I have been fighting the battle for not enjoying stuff for quite a while. Yeah. And from my experience, the main thing that separates me from other people is that, in my experience, almost everyone enjoys the idea of something rather than how it's done in the story. So as long as they get the general concept, they're fine with it. They don't care how it's done, or they don't have as many big expectations or rules for how it's done. For me, I'm more of a guy where themes are completely useless in the face of how you execute them. You can have the nicest idea in the world, but if you don't execute it correctly, then it's basically just a failed product. And for me, I think Wano heavily fails on the execution side of what I think Oda, or what I perceive Oda is trying to do. And I think Wano kind of has an identity crisis of what kind of arc or what kind of tone it's trying to set for a singular arc, because it borders on drama, tragedy, and comedy, but never settles on one or the other. Which you could argue, yeah, maybe Oda does that quite a bit.
Tone is different from
or
themes,
he includes
though.
Comedy, but I would say Oda heavily experiences himself in high tension scenes in bathos. It's something he does quite a lot. I would say that so far in Wano, the biggest issue for me, outside of plot holes, is character motivation and how it has not been established for most characters at least, or it has been skipped over entirely. And I know it's going to be like a general complaint that's, people complain that, Oda off screen. And I do think off screens have been a major issue with the arc so far, but I don't think off screens by themselves are bad at all. Off screens are necessary for almost all storytelling, depending upon what kind of story you're trying to tell. But the difference between good and bad off screening is what you replace the off screening with and how you pay off with that promise of the off screen. Because every time you off screen something, it's an indirect promise from the author that you're going to back it up with something later on. And I feel like Oda has not done that so far within Wano, with all the things that he has been off-screening and replacing them with. So, for instance, I think all of the Straw Hats, the Wano Alliance, and even the enemies have been portrayed in a manner that hurts them rather than helps them in the narrative. And heading into the Fire Festival, I don't think there is any way, at least from my perspective, that you can argue that things are really serious or that anyone cares.
What?
Like, yeah, that they care in the larger context that they're trying to do this, but their character motivations have been so poorly established and so poorly run that it's honestly hard to conceive that we've been 46 chapters into the arc so far.
Well, have you reread the arc?
Yeah.
You've reread the arc?
Yeah.
So you're seriously sticking to the idea that the Scabbard's motivations have not been clearly established?
No, not really. Like, they have the idea, like, they want to avenge Odin, but as far as them going as characters, they're poorly fleshed out characters.
The Scabbards are some of the best fleshed out characters, at least the ones that we've seen so far. So, like, this goes back to teams, right? Because, like, I know you're saying that, like, teams don't matter if the execution's not there, but then if you're missing the teams, then maybe you're missing what's being executed. So, for example, like, one of the big things that I talk about in my video is Ashura Doji and Kawamatsu, and how they're supposed to represent, like, two completely different sides of the same theme. And what we get fleshed out of one character and what we get fleshed out of the other character is supposed to, of course, tell us a lot about them, but also what Oda's trying to say. So the biggest theme, it depends what you call the biggest theme of the arc, but you could say it's loyalty, trust, but most importantly, faith. Basically faith in your comrades and then loyalty to your leader over time, right? So the big thing is obviously that everybody's been gone for 20 years. So everybody's been gone for 20 years. What we're exploring in Act 2 is the effect that this has had on the characters who have remained loyal to their comrades who have disappeared for 20 years. And with Ashura Doji, what we're exploring is the bitterness that can grow from that tested faith, basically, right? The resentment that can grow from, like, basically waiting and waiting and waiting on these characters who are ghosts, and then seeing good men have to die, seeing the country fall into ruin and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And you have to wait on these ghosts of these comrades that you don't know if they're going to return or not. You don't even know if you believe in them anymore. You don't even know if they come back, will it matter? But then at the end of it all, he still sticks to his mission. So he still goes about getting the blueprints. He still goes about, collecting ships and everything like that. But he's grown bitter over time. So when Kinemon and such finally return and they're basically saying, hey, you should stick to your bonds. Why aren't you joining up with us? He's furious. And his anger is not because, he gave up on them or anything like that. He kind of gave up on them, but at the same time, like, the essence of faith and loyalty is basically sticking to your mission even when you don't know if your comrades are going to return. He's furious that they're not acknowledging the destruction and, like, ruin that they left in their absence. And so finally their turnabout is finally when Kinemon is able to understand what has happened to Wano, and he comes back and begs Ashura to, look, I understand now, please come join me. And then Ashura is able to come back around. So on his side, Oda's exploring that side of fate. And then with Kawamatsu... And
here's where I totally agree with everything you said, Morj, except for how it was resolved.
What's the problem with how it was resolved?
The Wano Alliance has not earned anything they've gotten so far in the arc. To any degree whatsoever. They have been gifted things by the death of Yasui has basically given them everything because they weren't even trying. They didn't even
But Drizzt, that's the point. That's the point. The Wano Alliance, they've been gifted things, but the reason they've been gifted things, who have they been gifted things by? They've been gifted things by everybody who had to suffer for the 20 years. Like, the arc is exploring the value of that loyalty. Basically, like, where did they get their ships and their blueprints? They got it from one of the Scabbards who stayed behind and stuck to his faith no matter what. Where did they get their swords? They got their swords because Kawamatsu's loyalty and devotion then inspired loyalty and devotion in his subordinate,
right,
Onimaru,
yes, and that's all fun and good, but
that.
If these plot points are introduced to immediately be resolved without any care or any delicacy for how to put them, then what's the point of having to begin with?
I mean,
so for
that's
instance,
vagary
right?
stuff. That's vague stuff, like no delicacy or anything.
No, it's like this.
That.
So whenever we first find out, the blueprints, the swords, training an army, right? These are all things that you would have to go into, and they're just given to the characters. They're given to the Alliance. They never had to work to do anything. When Kinemon told Shutenmaru that he forgot what kind of man Kinemon was and that he would get him, Kinemon didn't do anything.
Because it was the other way around.
Went to Shutenmaru's home, burned it down in a fire, and then Shutenmaru, obviously mad, his trust was gained back by Yasui. So Kinemon actually hasn't done anything.
No, because you're not understanding. It wasn't actually about Ashura Doji's trust. At that moment when Ashura Doji is talking about the absence, we didn't understand what he meant at that time. Wano Act 2 is all about exploring that absence. So when Kinemon's saying, I'm gonna get you back, the way that whole plot line was actually resolved is that we understand by the end of it, it was actually the reverse. Ashura Doji's faith in them never wavered. He actually always had faith and trust in them, and we see from his men, like what he tells his men, like, we've all been ready to fight. What they were waiting for was an apology from Kinemon. Ashura was angry actually that Kinemon was coming back with that attitude that you left us and you're coming back and expecting us to all be happy to see you again. You need to apologize and beg. And that was what Yasu's death triggered in Kinemon. If you go back and reread that stretch of chapters, it's about Kinemon realizing from Yasu's death and then from the Smile Fruits exactly what type of terror that he left behind when he left for those 20 years. And then he has to come back and apologize to Ashura to basically say, please help us. And that's when the Alliance earns back Ashura Doji. And Ashura Doji,
except Kinemon didn't have to do anything to do that, Morj.
Kinemon had to apologize. He had to basically say, I was wrong.
After Yasui's death, Shuchimaru looked at them and said, follow me.
Yes. So he said, follow me, and then he went and showed them.
From Yasui's death, not from Kinemon.
Dude, Ashura Doji wanted to show Kinemon what those 20 years were. And
right,
that
and
was
right
the
after
point
he
of
does
it.
that, he just says, okay, let's fight.
Let's fight?
Yeah, right. Remember? As soon as Yasui dies...
No, soon as Yasui dies...
I forget which town. It might be Ibizu town. I'm not sure which town
it
is,
dude,
but they're
as
one
soon
of the
as
towns
Yasui dies,
Hold'em is.
As soon as Yasui dies, Ashura Doji then says, Kinemon, do you know about the Smiles? And after finding out everything about the Smiles and after Yasui's death, that's when Kinemon's basically apologizing. And on top of it, Kinemon tells Ashura Doji that, oh, also we set your thing on fire. So Ashura's mad on top of like all of that shit. And then at the end of it all, Kinemon's basically saying, I apologize. I didn't understand what this 20 years absence was. So like, it's a perfectly coherent thread with basically the start of Act 2 with Ashura telling Kinemon, you don't understand what your 20-year absence was for us. And then ending after finding out about Yasui's death, the Smile Fruits, with Kinemon apologizing and finally Ashura showing him to really hammer it in, look, this is what you left behind, showing him all the graves and such. And then after Kinemon has understood everything, Ashura is joining up with him again. Like, that entire thread was actually about Kinemon more so than Ashura Doji. Although it was using Ashura to explore the idea of like, you know, this is the resentment that can grow from your faith being tested over years.
That's an interesting perspective. And I actually kind of agree with you in everything that you said there. I think the themes match exactly what you say. I think the execution of those themes, however, is not... Like, I wouldn't say that was good. You can argue, like, yeah, whatever, it's subjective.
I can see that. I can see that. Like, I'm not going to say I love Kinemon's characters so far, or I love Ashura Doji. I think they're interesting characters. Sorry, Ohara, get your words
Yeah,
out.
I'm just going to throw my head in there. I mean, I kind of, like, see where both of you are coming from. Like, for me, the thing is that I think we all would wish, and I think Oda also would wish that, like, he had more time to flesh those things out. Like, I agree with Morj that, like, I think the characters have been introduced in the way that, like, their motivation or as far as their motivation goes and as far as their character development goes in this arc. The thing is, where I think you're coming from, Drizzt, is that, like, for example, the moment with Kinemon, like, that was done in, I think, if I can remember correctly, in like 1 or 2 panels. Like, I feel like those moments would maybe have been worth stretching and making, like, even, like, I think, like, Morj, what's great for you, and, like, I think I'm also, like, that type of reader who, like, picks up on that stuff pretty easily, but I think sometimes when it's maybe not as obvious where a character's motivation comes from, it might be worth to flesh that out more, to give that moment a little bit more heaviness, especially if it's like dumped in a chapter where maybe like Luffy is having a lot of training and then like we have Zoro with some upgrade, and then like I feel like scenes like these which are actually pretty crucial to character development, like matching them in a chapter with like really action rich stuff or where like someone gets a power upgrade, like that kind of blows dust on those scenes, and that, like, I think it makes it really easy to overlook them in the overall context of the chapter, which is, I think, why I was not so happy with those chapters where we were jumping around a lot of the time, and there was actually, like, important things happening at each place, but you kind of lost track of things because, like, we were jumping all over Wano, but then the chapter ended with, like, I don't know, like, Big Mom coming to the prison or something like that. So I feel like that might be a problem, which might be where Drizzt is coming from, if I got that correctly.
And I mean, I can agree with that. Like, I am hardlining the idea that, like, Oda does have a strong vision for this arc and what the characters in this arc are supposed to represent and everything like that. But I definitely agree that, like, the skipping around and stuff, and we don't get to, like, how'd you guys feel about, like, the Law Shinobu scene? Because to me, that felt like a really, like, that goes back to, like, you know, if you compare to, like, Luffy and Usopp back in Enies Lobby, like, that was a really powerful scene because the entire chapter was spent on that. But then Law and Shinobu, that got off-screened, like, part of it. And stuff like that does hurt, you know.
Or like the Straw Hats reuniting, right? Like, all of them reuniting except for...
That was the most hurtful part of the arc.
The Straw Hats reuniting twice. Actually, at the beginning of the arc, whenever Sanji meets the other half of the crew for the first time, that's off-screened. And they're just, like, chilling, eating, like, udon.
I guess, like, you can, of course, also, like, twist it in the direction where you say, okay, what Oda is basically saying with that is, even though we might have expected to have some kind of, or even though we thought there might have been some sort of conflict, maybe what Oda's just trying to say is, hey, like, nothing to see because there is no conflict. But at the same time, I still feel like since he was the one to kind of, like, hint at that, especially with the like with what Zoro said on Zou, I feel like that would have been important for many people to see, especially since the crew has been split up over so many years now. Like, I feel like just having those small moments are, like, really valuable, even if you have to sacrifice some other screen time for it.
Yeah, and I would say that's kind of like, for me, that's kind of like the main issues. That I don't think the Straw Hats as a group, I don't think they've really been done well so far in Wano, especially people like Chopper, for instance. Oh, my lord.
Yeah.
Chopper has been fairly bad with the Big Mom stuff, and the Big Mom stuff in general, you can say what you want about it.
No, I'm with you on the Big Mom
community,
stuff, for the record, because I didn't like the Amnesia plotline. I didn't like...
The Amnesia plotline, everyone was, like, worried. And, like, we're like, okay, we'll calm down. We'll wait to see where it goes. And then I would say most people would be unsatisfied with how that even went about.
I don't think...
how Big Mom was used as a method for the plot. I don't think
that's resolved, though. Like, I still feel...
I hope not.
You don't think so? Because I feel like the...
No, I hope not. I hope that there's more to it so that it actually justifies it happening in the first place. It's just that the way it was used. I mean, I don't think it's defendable.
If it were, like, if the sole purpose of giving Big Mom amnesia is to, like, make her end up fighting Queen and, like, her being shoved off to Onigashima and, like, basically clearing Queen out of the prison, that would be super disappointing because you could have handled that anyway. But, like, I still feel like I'm still very confident that, like, the real plot line or the real purpose of that amnesia plot was to let Chopper and, like, let some of Luffy's allies spend time with Big Mom and basically, like, make like, because she has the memories, right? She knows what happens. So I'm still a strong believer that, like,
she should know.
I'm still a strong believer.
We don't actually know.
She made a weird comment, which was like to King, which was the thing knocking me off the ship yesterday. But that was actually, it might just be Oda off with the timelines, but King knocked her off the ship 2 days ago, so it is possible that she just doesn't remember the whole day.
But I think she remembered at least, like, the village she was in. Like, I think when she regains her memories, right, she starts saying something about the village, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty sure, like, I at least I hope that's, like, because if that's the direction the whole plot has been taken, like, I'm really okay with that, depending on where in the end that, what that leads to in the end. But, like, of course, if the sole purpose of that arc was to give Luffy a breather and, like, make her meet up with Kaido, like, that would be a disappointment. But I honestly...
The entire prison sequence was so weird to me because this is, like, the third time or twice that Luffy has gone against his word. Where, you know, whenever, you know, he's supposed to go up against Big Mom, he always says the only way you can get stronger is basically, you know, let your hockey bloom. And then Luffy runs away. And then the entire prison's freed, and then he just comments, like, afterwards, oh man, Big Mom isn't here. And, like, he didn't even try afterwards after failing once, which is kind of like a not Luffy thing to do. I don't know why that happened. But, you know, maybe there's an explanation for it later that just, you know, we'll see. But so far, it's like, it goes against
I agree, that is an inconsistency.
I mean,
he did run from Big Mom.
Though I guess there's, like, a few arguments you could find
for that.
And
he ran from Katakuri, and then, you know...
Well, from Katakuri, he came back, which is the important point. So, like...
He did come back, but he did run away. Like, it wasn't like he was forced to run away because he had to go do something else. He was about to die.
That one I view as... I don't know, I view it as technical, because Luffy's intent was basically, I have to beat this guy. Like, I'm not running from the fight, but I am going to do what it takes for me to, like, make sure I have a shot at winning the fight. So, like... we're not going to get into that.
I guess an argument.
You can argue semantics.
I mean, you can always find reasons. Like, you could, for example, say that Luffy run away from Big Mom because, like, he has this rare ability where he can understand people's feelings. And, like, maybe he like I mean okay I don't want to construct like plot that hasn't been established, but like that would be a possible explanation. Also like that Luffy's mind is obviously like his mind is set on Kaido, right? Like so I think like the sole fact that Big Mom was suddenly there while he was like not expecting that at all, I feel like Luffy's the kind of person who would really be thrown off by that, you know?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Look, like Big Mom, I don't know personally if we're going to be delving back into like that side of her, just because I do feel like what I wanted to get to was the alliance between Kaido and Big Mom, just because to me, like big idea of this whole arc, like this entire conflict, what it was built on. It's
but that would be so disappointing. I feel like because then like if that I said that a lot now.
I've been trying to watch my likes during this podcast because I realize like that's the casual way I speak.
I'm really
like,
trying to pay attention to that too.
Like when I'm speaking seriously, then I don't say like as much. No. But in casual podcasts,
and if you're excited, like so. And
then people don't like it. That's why I can't listen to our podcast by the way, because really we say like so fucking much. It's actually disgusting. Yeah. All right.
Okay. But my point being was that if like I enjoy the Yonko alliance because I think that really changed the setup for the entire arc in an unexpected way, kind of. So I like that. But if, like I said earlier, like if the whole setup for the Yonko alliance was that you had to give Big Mom amnesia and then let her travel with Chopper and everyone, like that would be not only a...
I mean, it wouldn't actually make any sense.
That wouldn't make any sense. And it would just be a waste. And like I feel like there would have been like endless other options to do that, right? Like that would have been like have a small confrontation between the Big Mom pirates and like the Beast pirates, or like the Big Mom pirates smuggling in, like have that being a side plot line, the Big Mom pirates smuggling into Wano and then making their way to Onigashima or something, getting separated. Like you could have done any number of things, right? But like,
speaking of which, the Big Mom pirates have been AFK for the past 6 days.
They've probably just been away, like they're like
I don't know why that's the
cards
case.
Or something.
Let me get your guys' opinion on this, because this is something that, like, during the point in time, I thought this was going to be a big thing. And if you were on, I don't know if you guys watched last, like, Reverie in the One Piece YouTube community about, JB's.
I was in the last Reverie
stuff.
I remember.
Yeah, I don't know how long you were in it, but you know how there used to be, like, the entire theory centered around, Zoro's conflict with the crew, right?
Right. Yeah.
So something that I actually found peculiar with Wano is, I don't know how you guys feel about Zoro's relationship with Hiyori. I'm not digging it at this point in time.
Yeah,
but something that I thought was weird, that you know how Zoro got like separated from the crew before Kinemon talked about Oden, right?
Yes.
So Zoro, after that point in time, because after they learn about Oden, Luffy loses to Kaido, right? Zoro was not with the crew during that entire point in time. He only learned of Luffy's defeat to Kaido in the newspaper. And then for me, like, for how I perceive Zoro, and maybe I'm just getting it all wrong, I think he acted pretty oddly, because from that point in time, he just went gambling, and that's how he met Yasu.
So one thing...
I think the Straw Hat's reactions to Luffy's defeat are something that, like, Oda played it off as a meme, but it does kind of make me curious why that happened.
I'll talk to you on that, because I kind of wanted to segue to the Straw Hats in general.
Yeah.
So, if, for the record, let's say that had happened halfway through the arc, and that was Luffy's kind of, like, big point of... I don't know if you, like, I'm holding out in the idea that basically, like, every story, and Oda does this consistently, there's always, like, a low point partway through the arc where they fail.
Right.
So I don't treat that as that fail. I took that moment as something like the Straw Hat's confidence in Luffy at this point that has been built up over time. But if that moment had happened, let's say they all watched Luffy be defeated before Kaido in front of their eyes halfway through the arc, like at this climactic battle or something or like at the Fire Festival or something like that.
Right.
And then their reaction is nothing, then I would view that as a failure.
That would be...
It does seem kind of weird, though, because, like, Luffy just comes back and they just go to Wano and he loses in a one-on-one fight against the very person they come to defeat.
Yes.
And he gets imprisoned. And the response is played off for memes, which I'm totally fine with. But from that point in time, and, like, they made their plan to get Luffy, like the other crew, but Zoro didn't know the entire time.
Yeah, I do think that there will be a tone, like, so a big part of the theme of this arc, obviously, is, like, faith in your leader and stuff. Okay, actually, I want to dial back. Because this is something I want to talk about, like, it'll be in the video that's out today at this point or whatever, but this is kind of addressing basically the Straw Hats dynamic with Luffy in general, and I'll try to keep it short because I know we only have so much time or whatever. But here's how I saw most of the flow of ideas from pre-time skip, from Enies Lobby, my favorite arc, onto Marineford, my second favorite arc. So the flow of ideas there was basically, Enies Lobby was largely about, like, from Enies Lobby onwards, that was the start of focusing on Luffy and the Straw Hats as a crew. Up to that point, all the stories had mainly been about their dynamic as friends, as Nakama, as what you do for your Nakama and everything. But starting with Enies Lobby, that was about captain and crew, right? Like leader, followers and such. And Enies Lobby really focused on Luffy as the captain. And a lot of the dialogue throughout that was like his burden as a captain, what he has to learn as a captain. All the way through the Usopp conflict, what he had to do for Robin, how Lucci commented on like his burden as a captain being to, like, he has to be capable of protecting his crew and everything like that. So it was all about him as a captain. Thriller Bark, Sideline Luffy, it was all about how extraordinary the crew is. And like, fits with Moria, who doesn't believe with insubordinates and such, compared to Luffy, who has extraordinary support. So, okay, I'm not going to get too much into that. But, like, there was that, then there was, obviously, Thriller Bark, ends with the Kuma Zoro moment, their sacrifice and everything like that. And then Saboti was all about Luffy losing all of them, and he thought that he'd lost all of them. And then by the end of Marineford, he lost Ace, which kind of goes back to him being weak and everything like that. So the flow of ideas was importance of the captain, importance of the crew, and then by the end of it, they're all realizing, look, as the captain, I need to be really strong to be able to protect those that I care about. And the crew's all realizing that I need to become really strong to be, like, he can't become Pirate King without my help. So that was like a really strong thread of ideas that was like, it just feels so good reading through all of that, getting to the end of Marineford and each of them understanding what they have to do, otherwise they won't be able to succeed in the new world.
Right.
Now, none of that has been picked up since the time skip, like not once. But to me, that kind of made sense because the arc all of those other New World storylines were leading up to was Wano. And Wano, the big idea that I'm seeing in Wano basically is like, why are we reading a story about 9 scabbards? Like, we're reading a story about 9 followers who have lost their leader, and everything about the way that Odin has been described and their relationship with Odin sounds very much like Luffy and the Straw Hats, right? Like, 9 Straw Hats right now, 9 scabbards. They all lost this man who they, like, he had the king spirit. He once cut down Kaido. He wanted freedom. He wanted to break out of Wano and search the seas. He, like, rebuilt Wano. Like, Odin, everything that Odin has talked about is, like, as though he's this, like, larger-than-life man. And, like, even the way, like, the scabbards talk about, like, Odin was the one who saved me, took me in. Even shit like the same way Luffy saw Chopper as more than just a talking reindeer, like Inuarashi, Nekomamushi, like they used to call us talking dogs and cats, but Odin saw us differently. Like, so that's like that same parallel between Luffy and the Straw Hats and Odin and the Scabbards. And what this arc seems to be exploring through them is basically the idea of like a Straw Hat crew that lost their Luffy, right? And it's all about like how they can fulfill their master's wishes in his stead. So to me, and even in other characters like Momonosuke, who now wants to be strong enough to protect his scabbards and stuff. To me, like, the idea that's starting to come through in this arc, at least in the Act 2 setup phase, was very much like the bond between leader and followers that's, you know, continued on for 20 years and everything like that. And, like, their need to be able, like, he was able to die protecting them, but they were failed in protecting him and such. So, like, basically long-winded way of saying that, like, there was this plot thread going from Enies Lobby through Marineford that was about what the Straw Hats are to Luffy and what Luffy is to the Straw Hats. And now that we're at this big arc that Oda's been building up to since the New World, we're at this storyline that's also exploring like what a leader, really what a king is to his followers and followers are to their king. So my hope, my belief is that after we get to the main phase of the arc, which I don't think we've gotten to yet, we are going to be picking up that thematic thread from before about like, this is the arc where we would explore Luffy, not just as a captain to his crew, but like leader to his followers and what his followers are to him. I just think that that's what this whole arc is set up to be. So I think that it's been Straw Hat Light in the New World so far, largely because it just fits that this would be the arc that it all comes back around. Yeah. Like, Wano was the arc that Thriller Bark was largely foreshadowing.
For sure.
And Thriller Bark was the arc
Wano is basically the culmination of so many arcs. Like, basically since Punk Hazard, it's been building towards Wano.
I mean, that's the entirety of the New World.
Pretty much.
Plus a little bit of
like,
so
Drizzt,
maybe
like,
I don't know if it's like
it's
like an adequate response to like the sense that the Straw Hats have been, it's been very Straw Hat Light so far, but it's because I've kind of assumed so far that like,
I think
we're setting up the ideas to get to that. You know what I mean?
So you think we're going to get everything later on, but it's not going to be set up
I think it's pretty
now?
certain that like Act 2 has been, or Act 1 has been Estelle like introduces to the country, basically like the country as a whole. Act 2 has been introduced us to the situation, like the build up to the big battle, of course, but also introduce us to all the characters in the country. What are the dynamics there? Who has what backstory? And then now starting Act 3, because I know a lot of people have been complaining about the lack of screen time that each of the Straw Hats have been getting. I think starting with the war, like with the preparations, like first the clash on Onigashima, which I think like at least as it looks now, since it's the middle of the arc, will probably not be the final battle. So I think there will be a lot of times for now where the Straw Hats will not only get their fighting time, but also their time to ponder upon where they are as a crew, where they are personally. I think from now on out, we're going to have...
Do you think we'll actually get that?
Okay, Drizzt, if we don't get that, then I will have issues with the arc.
I just want to know, do you think we're actually going to get that?
I will have issues. Yeah, because to me, that's what it looks like setup-wise. If we don't get that, then I will definitely be very disappointed, because then to me, we're exploring the story of the Scabbards for no reason.
I hope we get it as well, Morj, but with the way like Oda has perceived like, you know, how much time he can spend on certain things, I don't know if he's going to go through with that, because like I know like a lot of people have been waiting for the Straw Hats to get fights since like the beginning of the New World, but with how many people are in Wano right now, I don't know if there's time to do that, which kind of leads me to talk to you about something, Morj. I saw your video about, you know, Wano being 200 plus chapters long, right? Do you still believe that?
Yes. Very much so.
Do you realize that if that's the case, that the Wano would be 7 years long?
Yeah, like, I don't view it in the same way as, like, past arcs weren't that long, so this arc can't be that long. Like, to me, that doesn't really matter.
More based on the premise, right?
For me, it kind of feels like if we're going to go into Act 3, and Act 3 is like the Fire Festival and beyond, we've kind of, or you would assume, unless I'm incorrect, that we've gotten past the point in phase where we're like most exposition, and we're getting into the meat and potatoes of the arc.
I think
where it won't be as long just setting stuff up.
But
how are you going to fill out the other 150 plus chapters?
Okay, so I mean, like, dialing back for a sec. So like, let's pretend the act ends like tomorrow or something. Or not ends tomorrow. Like, let's pretend the final battle is actually like tomorrow or whatever. Like, I think people have forgotten just how long One Piece finales take to happen. So like, no matter what the actual final battle, assuming it also involves the Big Mom Pirates and the Kaido Pirates or whatever, based on Dressrosa, the finale of Dressrosa started with the Birdcage. Like, that was when the final run of action all started. The Birdcage started in 745, and Dressrosa ended on 801. So, like, Dressrosa was much, much smaller in setup and number of characters than Wano is at the moment. So just the finale, whenever the finale starts, I'm expecting at least Dressrosa length amount of chapters, but most likely more. So like, it could literally be, like, it sounds ridiculous because other arcs haven't been this long, but I don't think that's relevant because none of them have had the setup.
But then, the premise for Wano has been just crazy.
It's totally different. So to me, like, if you just look at it with past, like, Dressrosa as a small prototype of what Wano would be, then finale-wise, it should be at least like 60 to 80 chapters on its own. Yeah. So, which is
that's a lot.
Which is a lot.
But I'm like, I think we're all on one
just
page.
Looking at that. But the reason I think it's 200 is because I think that the Fire Festival first fails, and then there needs to be this additional like rise back up section, which would be more Straw Hat focused.
So we're gonna have a repeat of this act?
No, because this act was not about the Straw Hat crew. This act
for Luffy, it was a rise back up because the second act focused on him,
getting stronger,
rising up from the prison, right? So we're gonna have that again.
But Drizzt, do you actually think that was like Luffy actually fell? Luffy didn't fall. Like his spirit wasn't.
Luffy did lose in a 1v1 the Kaido.
No, but the thing that was stressed throughout that was that his spirit wasn't broken. Like, you can't break Luffy's spirit that easily anymore. So whatever happens...
So do you think we're actually going to get it broken?
We're going to have a real test. I don't think he's had a real test of his spirit being broken. Like, do you think Udon Prison Mine was actually Oda's attempt to, like, show Luffy suffering or, like, having his spirit broken?
I hope not.
No. So, like, that's my point. I definitely think that, like, we're at a point where we're actually going to be testing the bonds of the crew, their faith in the captain, because that's, at least to me, what the arc seems to be about, and Luffy's ability to actually rise back up from, like, serious.
It would be a very interesting idea to toy with if people actually doubted Luffy.
Yeah, so they don't right now. But what if they actually
because
watch
right now it's like,
Luffy
especially for like the people of Wano, because I mean, Luffy is like their savior right now, but he was in the prison just like everyone else because he lost the Kaido.
Yeah, which is a little funny to think about.
So, which no one mentioned, but it would be very interesting if later on in the arc, like, let's say Luffy goes through another massive defeat, he's just not enough for Kaido. If people are like, oh, can we actually do this?
Yes. I legitimately believe that is the direction the arc is headed.
Morj, I would love that.
That is legitimately the
I
direction.
think it's probably going to be
Luffy,
more about emotions rather than fighting.
Yeah. All I'm saying is, like, you remember when Luffy first lost to Aokiji right away?
Yeah.
That's how I view his initial loss to Kaido. Like, alright, you took an L, kid, but, like, that's not, like, everybody brushed that off kind of quickly, and it's like, alright, move on to the next thing.
I mean, there have been a lot of fights like that, like Luffy's fight against Crocodile, Luffy's fight against Lucci, he got fodderized at the beginning of both of them.
Luffy's fight with Crocodile I view a little different.
Although Luffy's fight with Crocodile at the beginning, I don't think any of the crew actually believed that Luffy was going to win.
Yeah, they didn't think, well, they kind of, no, it's weird, because if you go back and read those chapters, like,
they talk about believing in Luffy, but at the same time, they're like sweating in the face. So, like, they're kind of like putting up a front. It's like, we believe, but at the same time, it's like... You know,
so we haven't had that shit in a while because their faith in Luffy is so strong. But again, I encourage you to check out my video and then maybe we can talk later. Because like maybe then you can maybe poke some holes at it or something like that. But like I can
I think you've actually done a very good job so far, Morj. I think all of your themes that you've talked about, I think you've been directly on point. I think a lot of what I'm talking about is that
execution.
Execution. It's like everything, all of those plot lines, you did a perfect job tying them together. I think I just don't like the way the manner in which they're done. Like,
well, I think
and I can't fix small inconsistencies.
I think
also Ohara, don't you have to go?
So I'm going to slowly wrap this up. I think it's definitely worth to say that we're 100% going to sit back together after the next arc, or maybe the next act, and maybe in the middle, depending on how long it'll be.
Depends. Yeah.
But I think we should definitely, like, there was so many great points. I didn't really want to interrupt you guys too much, but I think there was so many great discussion points here.
I'm sorry.
That's not no worries, man.
If we had more time,
that was a lot of fun. But we should definitely follow up on that. So thanks so much for being here, Drizzt. Tell the people, like, I'm definitely going to link your channel in the description below. So guys, definitely if you haven't checked out Drizzt or don't know who he is, definitely make sure to check out his channel. He has a very different view on One Piece as you heard today, but I think it's still pretty great
to critically minded view. Yeah. A critically minded view that people should look at.
I think it's definitely important because like I feel watching the content from different from a different perspective and through like different glasses is definitely super important. He has great insights. Like I think we can all say that we all love the story. So I think it's really, really great to have you here, discuss this stuff with you. I think it also helps us like looking at things a little bit differently. Thanks so much for being here. Where can people find you on Twitter?
I think it's twitter.com/DrizztTheories.
Okay, I'm definitely gonna...
So have a good time spelling my name.
I'm definitely gonna put that in the description below. Also, as always, you can find Mr. Morj at Morjman, and you can find me at Ohara the Fox. So all in the description below.
Also, sorry about like taking over the stream. Whenever me and Morj start talking, it just goes off.
It's fine, man. I enjoyed it. I just like... I'm hosting, so it's fine. So thanks so much, guys, for joining again.
We can get Brago in on the next.
Yeah, man, for sure.
4-way.
For sure.
We can test out
BDA Law
and Brago and BDA Law, both for sure. Guys, it's been a pleasure. I hope you have a great weekend, and we can't wait to can't wait to see your videos, Morj. That might be out by the time this podcast goes.
It will be out. It will be out. I swear.
And also Drizzt. I'm
questionable.
looking forward to your stuff in the future. Okay. Have a great one, guys.
See you, dude.
Bye-bye.